Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're up to the 198th Scientific Governance and Risk meeting here at MakerDAO. My name is Peyton Rose. I go by Pros11 online, and I am a governance facilitator here with the DAO. Today, I'm joined for a weekly call by a bunch of awesome people that care about the Maker protocol. Many are working for the protocol, some are just interested. So whatever camp you fall into, we're really glad to have you here. You probably noticed as well, this meeting is being recorded. So hello if you're watching us at a future date as well. In kind of pursuit of having a good, effective meeting, would like to lay down a few ground rules before we get started. First off, let's try not to talk over one another. A, that's annoying. B, it kind of ruins the recording. So if someone else is speaking, go ahead and let them finish. There are a few tools you can use to let me as the host know that you have something you'd like to add to the conversation. Number one, you can use the raised hand feature if you'd like to join the proverbial speakers list that's located under reactions here in Zoom. And I'll be more than happy to call on people as they raise their hand. If you're unable or otherwise unwilling to hop on the mic, you can always drop your comment or question in chat and we'll work it in when conversationally appropriate. With all that, like, don't do stuff said, this is an open meeting. We do really encourage and appreciate your feedback and presence here. So if there is something you'd like to add, please do feel free to join it. We'll try to make the process as easy and as inclusive as possible. All right, I think that more or less covers who we are, what we're doing here. So might as well get started. Got an agenda as usual today. We'll start with our governance roundup, going over the votes, what's going on in the Maker improvement proposals, as well as the Maker forum. Then we have no initiative updates scheduled for today, which means we can hop right into our discussion topics. We've got a big main feature discussion topic of revisiting PSM fees. So we'll be talking about what that would entail and the pros and cons to doing so. And if there's still time to discuss, we thought the topic of a Maker constitution might be interesting as it's been floated by a couple recent proposals. So excellent. I'll hop right into the votes and we'll work through the agenda. If there's still time at the end, we'll have open discussion. So if you do have something unrelated that pops in your head, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll kind of put a bookmark into it until the end. Okay. So votes at MakerDAO, we had a few votes that ended this week. Take the polling page, thank you, Thomas. 3 of our weekly polls ended. We had adding HV Bank as a new vault type that passed. We also had the monthly recommendations from the Open Market Committee, those passed. And finally, we had that signal from the Strategic Finance Core Unit asking Maker holders what net profitability level they would like to see their models target. And the winner in that option was break even, which was defined as plus or minus 5% from profitability. Cool. You might have also noticed our first go at the prioritization polls concluded. So be on the lookout for a report on how that went in the forum. Was a bit of a stumble of original unveil, I will admit, but we do have some neat info to learn from. And we're looking forward to releasing a V2 this month, potentially with some new voting features that Dux has been working on. So yeah, look forward to announcing that. But those polls did conclude, so you can take a look and see how people ranked options there on the voting portal. Cool, that'll take us to our executives. Yesterday's executive has already passed, which is awesome. We'll still need the few day delay to execute though. As far as next week's executive, you can look forward to the implementation of the Keeper DSS Fest stream. There's one more added detail from this week's executive that needs to be taken care of next week. And then we will have the parameter recommendations for the Maker Open Market Committee as well. Cool. So that's enough of me talking. Let's kick it over to someone else for the MIPS update. I think I see Pablo on the chat.
Yep. Hello, Peyton. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hello. New MIPS updates. The July formal submission window closed yesterday, and we've had only one submission for this governance cycle, which is Patrick Chase facilitator onboarding proposal for GovAlpha. And that's it. The ratification poll for this proposal will go up this upcoming Monday. So let's move on to the proposals in RFC. Yep, we can skip that slide. So we have had two top-level MIPs, MIP 76, Makershire Redux, which was formerly introduced as a special purpose fund and rejected, and is now being reworked into a top-level MIP that addresses some of the concerns that its previous iteration raised. We also have a MIP 72, which has been in RFC for a while now. It authorizes Sixes Capital as a real-world asset arranger for MakerDAO. We have a special purpose fund for recognized delegate 𝘰𝘰𝘮𝘮𝘮𝘮. It's proposed with the intention of having a fund to pay legal fees and expenses to retain her, 𝘰𝘰, as a full-time interim chief legal officer of MakerDAO for a period of 6 months. We have two coordinate budgets, one for the DAI Foundation, which introduces multiple options that cover bear and super bear market scenarios, and one budget for the Oracle's core unit. These budgets are being submitted outside of the budget windows that were introduced with the recent MIP 40 amendment. This falls under the transitional grace period. Next slide. We have one facilitator onboarding for Psychonaut. This is a resubmission for a proposal that was rejected last cycle. Psychonaut is aiming to be onboarded as a facilitator for the ImmuneFi security core unit. We also have two proposals aiming to afford the events core units. These two proposals are to be considered as a unity, and if formally submitted, they will be bundled into a single ratification poll. Basically, these two just afford the events core unit. Next slide. And we have three amendments posted just yesterday. MIP 42 SP 22 amends MIP 50, that is the direct deposit module, and makes it more general. So whereas it was specific to lending protocols before, it now aims to cover all external protocols that allow users to deposit and withdraw DAI. And the other two amendments have been in RFC for a long time. MIP 42 SP 21 amends MIP 0 to introduce the notion of retrospection dates for MIPs. And MIP 42 SP 15 amends the core unit voting process, provides increased clarity, etc. And that's it from me. It was a pretty short MIPS update. Thank you, everyone.
Trying to remember the last time we only had one ratification poll up for vote. Thanks for the update there, Pablo. And yeah, awesome. That'll take us to our forum at a glance updates, and I see Artem ready to go.
Yes, I just posted the link. Yeah, the forum at a glance is a pinned thread now, so hopefully it's easier to find. And there's also a directory in case once it gets very long, you could just click it and get straight to the most recent post. But we'll get started. So happy Thursday, everyone. And a quick forum recap. It's actually going to provide a bit of a lighter load of posts. I guess some people took a rest week to re-energize their mind and their fingers. But we'll get started with this week's announcement. And first up, we have the DAI Foundation Board, who will be hosting an in-person community meeting during the EVCC coming up for anyone interested in learning more about the DAI Foundation. Now, tickets are unfortunately currently sold out, but we'll see. Hopefully, maybe some could open up. But if you are planning to attend the Divinity Party at EVCC, you can message Leg Events on the forum or in the comments in their most recent thread and be allocated for a pre-release code. The Divinity Party will take place at the Bridge Club Bridge Club in Paris on July 19th. And next up, we have the Risk Core unit, who recently made a post announcing the version 3 of the Maker Risk dashboard, which includes a new design and new pages for vault types, PSM, D3M, Oracle liquidations, and additionally, they now have whale data that has been created and included. So check it out. And next up, we have Strategic Finance Core Unit, who posted May's update for the monthly core unit expenses and the forecast for the next 3 months. And a couple of key points is DAI expenses were 3.2 million in May, about 600,000 less than what was forecasted. And Oracle gas expenses continue to trend lower with decreased network congestion. And there's more information on May's expenses available in the post, so check it out. And now moving on to our discussions, the emergency shutdown module is currently set at 150,000 MKR. However, in a possible attack, the attacker could short the MKR token, trigger the ESM, and then close their position once MKR price drops. Now, with this, by providing a series of calculations, Astro demonstrates that given the amount of MKR available for borrowing on other protocols, the current ESM threshold of 150,000 is high enough to make such an attack unprofitable. Additionally, there is no consensus right now that would merit to trigger the ESM. And in case of such a crisis, MKR holders are probably more likely to sell their MKR rather than to deposit it in the ESM to be burned. In conclusion, Astro proposes that it may be worth considering the question of whether we need to continue to have an ESM. And there are some mixed comments on the idea. Ultimately, recognized delegates and core unit facilitators did make it aware that shutting off the ESM will impose greater incentives actually to steal all of our assets, which are worth a lot more than the cost for taking the hack. And additionally, it would put our vault users in undesired risk. And MakerMan finishes it off by recommending to form something like a small subject matter expert group to produce a report of recommendations before deciding on whether or how to change the ESM threshold. And next up, long posted summaries for part 3 and 4 of Rune's endgame plan. For anyone who's trying to keep up or better understand the endgame vision, definitely recommend to read the posts and use it to promote further discussion and education on that topic. And next up, we have N Capital, who expressed interest in becoming an attester for Maker to deal with underwriting responsibilities and fiat on and off ramps for DAI. N Capital team has over 40 years of experience with originating, underwriting, and investing in asset-backed loan portfolios, and aggregate a totaling of 500 million transactions. For more information, check out their proposal. And surprisingly, there are no signal requests active, which happened once in a lifetime. But yeah, so it's quick, and that's it. For some more announcements and posts and discussions, definitely check out the forum at a glance.
Thanks, Artem. Definitely kind of viewing the ebbs and flows of the governance cycles, lots of signals and ratification polls last month, not as many this. Of course, now you got 𝘱𝘰𝘴𝘦 thinking ideas, so we'll see how long it lasts. But I appreciate the update as always. Cool. So as I mentioned at the top of the call, we do not have any initiative updates today, so they'll take us right into our discussion segment. And I think Thomas is looking to kick that off.
Yes, thank you, Peyton. Appreciate it. Today's discussion topic, hello everyone, Thomas Footer with the GovComms team. Our discussion topic today is rethinking PSM fees. This was a post that came out several days ago, and Tim 𝘱𝘱𝘃 came up and posted it on the forum. We had some really good discussion about it, and asked him and others to come in and talk today about this post. I think there was something of a similar request that was coming, but there was some really lively discussion that we wanted to open up today, and I wanted Tim to go ahead, and if he would, go ahead and talk to us about this post, your thoughts on, I believe it was the 0 PSM fees, Tim. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you and take it here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas, for putting me on the spot. So just to give a brief introduction, the PSM is basically a module where everybody is able to provide USDC and get DAI or any other stablecoin that we have a PSM for, and the vice versa. So as long as we have USDC in the PSM, you could provide DAI and get USDC out of it. And from the very beginning, we had the PSMs designed with a fee both for the in and the out transaction. And I think just, I don't know, half a year ago, something like this, basically we decided to lower the fees to 0. So essentially allowing swaps for free. I think the main reason by that time was not really about the lack of revenue we're making, but more about that we basically can enforce a pretty much hard peg on the DAI. So I mean, just, I don't know, 2 years ago, we had this issue of DAI not really keeping the peg. And since we have a lot more demand on DAI than we have supply on DAI, if we don't have the PSM, basically the DAI would trade above $1 all the time. So the PSM was a very powerful way of enforcing a hard peg, which was not originally designed because DAI was always designed to be on a soft peg. So the issue we are facing here right now is that over the last, I don't know, couple of months, the amount of DAI generated by classic vaults, basically by people locking up collateral and then minting DAI out of it, basically diminished to something like less than 20% right now. So 80% of the DAI in circulation is not backed by any crypto collateral, so by anything made out of vaults, but instead basically by people swapping USDC into the PSM and by that minting DAI. The issue I'm having here is not so much about the questionable situation that we have, basically a lethal amount of USDC in our books. So if, I don't know, something really bad is going to happen, like blacklisting or whatever, or depegging of USDC, we would be doomed. It's more about that I think we turned our backs on the original users of the Maker protocol, which is people locking up collateral in a vault for then generating DAI. So there are essentially just two cases where you would use those vaults, those classical things like you provide collateral and then you mint DAI out of it. One thing is leveraging, so you basically bet on your you bet on something you're going to buy with the DAI is going to explode in price, and then you make a profit. So that's one point. And the other point is that once DAI is trading north of the peg, then you could essentially arbitrage with the DAI you're minting out of the vaults. So since nobody has an appetite for leverage anymore, remember we are in a bear market. Last time I checked. Nobody is using vaults anymore. And since it's basically free to swap USDC for DAI and vice versa, the other reason why you would lock up collateral in a vault for arbitraging this depegging is basically gone. It's just not reasonable to lock up any collateral to create DAI to arbitrage on the peg. Which is why I'm thinking, and I've been chatting with a couple of people about this, but especially with Brian from protocol engineering. I've been thinking about maybe we should recreate this incentive for arbitragers by increasing the fee, the transaction in the TIN fee a bit. I was not even thinking about any specific value, but I was thinking about maybe we should just revisit the idea of actually providing an incentive again for arbitraging with crypto collateral. That pretty much sums up my motivation why I was proposing to think about this. I mean, this comes along with probably a lot of side effects. I don't know if you even know all of them. I mean, there are side effects like for people who want to do really large transactions so swapping DAI against USDC, they wouldn't have the guarantee anymore to have a hard peg using the PSM. Or people who are using this 𝘰𝘰𝘮 thing, or I think this has been renamed, so basically providing liquidity to Uniswap with a 50x leverage or something like this, they would probably be affected by that. Yeah, so the idea of this post was basically to find out what is the sentiment and find out what are the missing pieces I haven't had in mind. But yeah, the ultimate goal of this post was to check sentiment and then start a signal request and do the whole governance circus that we would need to do to actually raise the tin or just get this rejected on chain. Yeah. Any questions up to here, or maybe that was even too detailed? I don't know what I should say here.
Thank you, Tim. I think we've got several folks in the chat if they want to respond to Tim's opening.
Yeah, I don't know if you have a mic, Mark, but I noticed this comment about real-world A borrowers and other large borrowers caring strongly about a one-to-one peg. That might be a good kind of counterpoint to explore. Or anyone on the real-world asset side, perhaps. Well, I'm happy to explain the concept, but if someone wants to argue it further, feel free. But basically, one kind of objection, right, to adding fees to the PSMs is that, as you were demonstrating, Shruti, that means no hard peg, which is harder for both large borrowers and real-world assets borrowers, who, if they can't depend on a one-to-one peg, then have to do some currency hedging in addition to whatever setup they're having to create in order to convert DAI to hard money or spending money. So that's certainly one con to the list, I guess. I'm seeing a comment like below is good for them. It's like, well, kind of, right? Unless you plan to borrow more, and then the amount you borrow is worth less at the bank than what Maker thinks it's worth.
Yeah. Hey guys, I want to comment on this topic a bit. Like, if the only argument, to basically increasing tin is, basically this incentive for crypto vaults to basically mint more DAI, I think that like there is high probability that they're kind of, indifferent to this change. Because, for example, like during the last, I would say 1 year, we tried to basically with different initiative to basically lower USDC reserves. This was like one of the main goals of the whole DAO, at least to like my understanding. And like one of these initiatives was to basically lower stability fees on the vaults, with hope that there will be more demand with basically lower price. But at least to my knowledge and to like the people that I talk to, mostly like the stability fee has like very slim effect on actual demand for leverage. So from basically this point, I kind of doubt that basically slight premium will have a higher effect than the stability fee has.
All right, thank you for the comment.
Like, if you guys will allow me, like I want to comment a bit more on the general PSM kind of approach. And first thing, I want to basically, say how I saw the past and, why we even introduced PSM. So to my knowledge, we basically introduced PSM because of two reasons. The first reason is that the traditional soft peg mechanisms to maintain the peg, right, basically do not work during large market drawdown. Like there are several reasons why they don't work, but like mostly, like when you have like a 40% drop on Bitcoin or ETH, like there is not a lot of people who are like jumping on the train to mint debt and build leverage in this point in time. And like the other big reason why we introduced PSM, like I said, to my knowledge, is that basically the vision was that we will, like grow based on real vault assets, because the hard pack is much more important for real vault assets than it is for just like general crypto back loans. And then like for, like probably 1 year or even more in the past, we kind of tried to lower USDC reserves or diversify them or whatever, right? But like most of these initiatives kind of failed. And right now, at least how I perceive the activity in the DAO, this philosophy kind of shifted towards basically trying to achieve some kind of return on the reserves instead of getting rid of them. So, like if I understand the new philosophy right, basically like the new strategy is to have as much reserves as possible, right? So I think that the whole DAO kind of needs to first decide what even the strategy is, right? And then like when we understand this at least, then we should tweak with PSM and stuff how DAI as like a pegged currency even works. So yeah, like when I was thinking about these things, right? Like my solution, which like could maybe work, is that we would kind of introduce TIN, but at some kind of higher level, let's say 3 or something like this %. And basically the PSM would only serve as a like, hard pack vehicle in the cases of large market drawdowns. So basically between like normal market conditions, the traditional soft pack mechanisms would basically, try to arbitrage this slight pack, but like we need to understand that these soft mechanisms will never, fixate hard pack DAI to 1. But with the PSM and like high fees, we will still ensure like the maximum possible fee, the maximum possible premium, for example, right? So like we could have like, this security that DAI will not deviate from the pack extremely, but at the same time, we can reintroduce this like traditional MakerDAO soft pack mechanisms, which like many participants enjoyed more like in the past.
Appreciate that explanation. And Shupi, I know you brought up this topic and you had your hand raised for a little bit. I don't know if you had something else you wanted to add or not.
No, I just suck at Zoom. Sorry, I have nothing to add here.
Okay.
I mean, like, I've heard that Genesis can only do 25 million DAI at its clip. So why in the hell would like a whale want to use DAI when transferring 100 million, 200 million, right? Like on Whale Alert, you see these BTC transfers and ETH transfers in the, 9 digits. So if Genesis could only handle 25,000 DAI, why in the world would any whale want to use DAI? I think that's the bigger question. Like me personally, like I would, if I had 9 figures ready to move, I'd rather do it in DAI than in BTC or ETH. Truth be told, some people might shoot me for saying that, but it is what it is. So that to me is the bigger question, right? How are we affecting the confidence of the way to get out, right? Like as someone who's going to earn 9 figures in DAI or BTC, maybe I want to go out there and buy myself an American football team or something, and I'm just bored of being in DeFi. So if I want an out and Genesis could only take 25 at a clip, why would I use DAI?
Some good questions for us there, Frank. Appreciate it. Might be helpful. I don't suspect this is like an easy question to answer, so maybe I shouldn't ask it. But I am curious in terms of like actual both revenue impact estimates as well as like usage impact, right? Like, has anyone looked into how the fees might affect either of those things? So obviously, we can expect less usage when it's being charged for. Go for it, Tim. Should be, sorry.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers, but I don't expect any direct effects on the PSM and the fees directly, because we have tons of liquidity on Curve and Uniswap and whatever. So this would, as this is going to be cheaper than exchanging within the PSM, this would get sucked up earlier. So I think this is going to have some kind of trickle down effect on the long run. But if we would turn up the tin right now, this is not going to. At least that's what I guess. This is not going to have a direct effect immediately.
I just wanted to say I agree with 𝘱𝘰𝘭𝘺. I think that like if we increase tin, basically nothing will happen. Only like the pack will slightly change, but we will not like reduce reserves or anything like this.
And
Can you guys hear me?
𝘱𝘰𝘭𝘺, oh, sorry, just one question to 𝘱𝘰𝘭𝘺. Like, why is that you thought that we have to rethink the PSM fees? It is because you think we have a lot of USDC, or it is because you think we need to get revenue from the USDC? Like, what is the, I would like to understand the problem to solve so we can think about the solutions.
Okay, so my intention is not about the amount of USDC we have right now. There are other people who are more concerned. I'm not part of this party, at least not vocal. My concern is that I don't want the product of Maker or the backing of DAI to be just a wrap USDC with T-bills on top of it. That's not how I think this should run. So either we have, I don't know, reward assets, or we have at least a rising amount of DAI being created by vaults. It could be institutional vaults, it could be whatever, I don't care, but I want DAI to be backed by vaults and not a PSM. That is my primary reason. And yeah, I mean, we have been lowering the stability fees for quite some time, and every mom's meeting, I have the feeling we are just turning knobs and it doesn't have any effect. And that's just sad. So I would like to encourage people using our main product again, which is vaults, from my point of view, because this is following the be your own bank narrative that I really liked, and that I really like, and that was basically the thing that brought me to Maker. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. I think we have to like think about the problem before analyzing a solution, because maybe there are other solutions. Like, and how I see it, like if you don't want Maker to invest the PSM on T-bills, well, I think Maker holders want that. I don't know if that already passed, but then like we have to like think in that direction.
Yeah, okay, so this is not a black and white thing. So I don't like the idea of having T-bills, but I think it's inevitable. We need to do that to survive right now. I think it's a proper way of dealing with the current situation. But in an ideal scenario, we wouldn't need to do that. So if all the PSMs would drain, there would just be no plan for investing in T-bills, for example. But yeah, so I put up this post not to do something about the PSM or the tin, but to basically start a discussion on what's going on. If somebody has a better idea than raising the tin, then I'm more than happy about this. I just don't want to complain about, oh, we do have too much USDC in the PSM, yada yada yada. You need to come up with a proposal of doing something, even if it's a bad proposal, I think.
Yeah, and if you want more DAI Vault users, then go out there and get them, bro. That's it. You got to get out there, close deals, attract new users. That's it. There's no other way around it. By you increasing the 10 basis points, 20, 30, you're not going to get more users. The only way to get users to go out there, be innovative, close deal, bring institutional vaults, blah, 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 blah. I mean, come on, that's the drill. There's only one way to grow a protocol, and that's by closing deals, attracting users, having that network effects that's going to build it. It's not by increasing 10 basis points, 20 basis points, 30 basis points, and over here arguing until we're blue in the face about USDC and too much in the PSM, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just my opinion. That's how things get done, man. You close deals.
Yeah, I cannot do that. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, the point of a permissionless system is to not have to close deals. It's to provide, the right solutions so that people will want to use our product. I'm going to quote Thomas Sowell here and say that, many of today's problems are a result of yesterday's solutions. And right now, 85% of DAI backing being USDC is a problem. Typically, we've got this trifecta where we can optimize for DAI users, optimize for maker holders, or optimize for vault holders. And throughout this whole process, we've been kind of optimizing for DAI users and neglecting vault holders. But now it seems like we're also adding this fourth leg to the problem, where we're optimizing for real world assets, which we don't really have a lot of, and all of our revenue does come from vaults. So as a vault holder, right, if I want to generate DAI from a vault, I put my collateral in, I pull the DAI out, and I'm at this point really effectively losing money on DAI because I've got to pay gas fees and things like that. We've stripped every single incentive for a vault holder to take DAI against their collateral by not allowing it to float in the market. And I'm not quite sold on the fact that vault holders are concerned about a real strict one-to-one peg, because I know I'm not, and I'm not even sure why real world asset holders would be, right? If they even if there's a 1% TIN on the PSM, right? They can. That doesn't mean that DAI is $1. It means that it can trade between $1 and $1 on other markets, right? We've got Uniswap, we've got Curve, we've got other places where we've basically just rugged all of that range for trading. So we've kind of stunted liquidity pool growth. We've stunted the ability for vault holders to at least recoup some of their gas costs on DAI generation, and we've eaten the whole market for the DAI trade, and that is long-term harmful to DAI. I want to point out, we talk about how vault holders don't want DAI to be off peg, but I don't see how that doesn't come out as a wash in the end, right? Like if you borrow 100 million DAI and you're able to sell them on the market, maybe not through the PSM, but on the open market for $1, and then you have to buy them for $1 when you come back to repay your vault. It's a net wash. Like we're trying to optimize for something that doesn't really seem to be an issue, and just setting the fees to zero was the no pain option, right? No pain, no gain, and we've just eaten the entire market, and it's causing predictable downstream problems that we're dealing with now, and to the point where we're talking about off-chain assets, which is completely antithetical to the spirit of DeFi. I think that's it.
But Brian, I think we have two different problems or challenges, however you want to say it. One is I'm an advocate to maintain DAI at 1, because I don't think this is just a real world assets problem. It's a real world problem. If people think they are getting a stable coin pegged to the dollar, they are expecting that one DAI is $1. They don't understand. I mean, they don't understand what's decentralized, what is a decentralized stablecoin. It will be way harder to explain what is a soft peg stablecoin. And I think that probably if they can understand what that is, they will prefer another stablecoin better than DAI, because they never know what will happen with DAI. It will be unpredictable. So I think
sorry.
No, that when like if DAI is not at 1, it will not affect just real world assets, but also any DAI user. Like I wrote that in the post. Like I try to pay to any service provider in DAI, and it's just because it's easy for me to demonstrate that one DAI is $1. If exchanges on off ramps want to have DAI on their inventory, they have to buy large amounts of DAI, and if it increases in value to the exchanges, they will increase the value to retail. So it will not just affect real world assets or big borrowers, it will affect retail. So we will be, maybe we will be going back to the Vault users, but we will be forget about the DAI users, and we have to maintain like a middle ground between both. So
right, and I think that's what my point was, right? We've got that trifecta, and we've been over optimizing for DAI holders for way too long. So DAI has value because Vault holders are over collateralized, and at some point they want to buy back DAI to repay their vaults, to recover their over collateralized, assets. DAI has its own demand built in with the incentive structure in the system. We are out there in the market trying to further incentivize DAI beyond that, but we're not doing anything to stimulate supply. And in fact, I would argue that the PSM being at 0 is discouraging additional supply for this pain-free option of not trying to induce vault generation of DAI.
And do you think that it's possible to think other options to incentivize vault usage? Like, for example, if we could think about a vault that you lock ETH, but then you can use that ETH to do something else. Maybe that's not technically possible, but maybe that's a feature that will be interesting to people. I don't know, like maybe we are just like focusing the conversation on the PSM, but the real problem is how we can incentivize the usage of the vault. So one thing that I agree with Monet is that like vault users love predictability. So if we can tell them, okay, we will keep these fees until end of the year, that's something for them. That's a lot for them. And I think they will appreciate that even more than maybe DAI will go to 1.01 or maybe not. You don't know. You have to be prepared just in case. So predictability is gold for people wanting to open a vault. So I think, yeah, that it will be great if we can think on different solutions on how to incentivize the usage of the Maker vaults and analyze all these solutions from a technical perspective, and also what will be the impact for DAI users and vault users, and stop thinking just about the PSM. Like try to I don't know, think about more ideas.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal situation, we'd have some asset that was like inversely correlated to Ethereum or Bitcoin that people could speculate on the short side. We don't really have that though, so we just have the stables, which are kind of the intermediate play. But I want to get back to the point. Like, if we raise the PSM fees to even 1%, like that's not saying that DAI is going to be $1 in the market, right? That what that does is it opens up the window so that the market can trade in between the $1 and the $1. It means that vault holders may have to go out and sell their DAI on an open market to get a rate that they like. But what it also means is that we would be guaranteeing that in a DAI liquidity crisis, if the markets are collapsing and vault holders need to repay their DAI, we can guarantee $1. But for anything outside of that, we would be letting the market take care of it instead of trying to be the market for them.
Brian, like, I have one question for you. Like, do you think that DAI could function without PSM at all, or like, do you think
Absolutely.
we still need?
DAI did function without the PSM. SAI functioned its entire life cycle without a PSM, and it actually traded under peg the whole time. DAI didn't start trading above peg until the bull market. So I think that when we are, we have internal debates on whether this actual market cycle is over, but at some point DAI will start trading under market as people are exiting crypto, trying to get back to dollars in their TradFi accounts, because that just happens. It's tidal. In that case, DAI is going to be under all of these plans to take these USDC off chain and put them in bonds are going to be dashed, because we're going to have to pull them back on chain to pay these redemptions out. So I mean, what we should be doing is encouraging vault demand as sticky users who are actually generating revenue for the protocol, because we've taken this easy route of just hard locking through the PSM. And we've got this huge supply, which is a great vanity metric, but it's going to disappear, and we're not going to have anything to show for it when it's all over.
Just like based on the experience of the major whales that are using the protocol, they all use the PSM, and for them it's important that one-to-one between DAI
and that's the point. Like,
USDC.
why aren't they using vaults? Like, how do we get them to use vaults?
Oh, no.
Instead of the PSM.
I mean the whales that are using Maker vaults. So the main ones using the ETH vaults and the WBTC vaults. After they get DAI, they convert it to USDC.
I think there's a little disconnect here between saying that one-to-one is necessary, but like, how strict does this one-to-one be? Let's say the third place after the comma shifts a little, or the second even. How are you seeing this affecting demand for DAI? Is this like a no-go? I don't know. Like, it's a question I really have.
Would you mind repeating that question, Raf, one more time?
Sure. It's like, how tight does the peg have to be, in your opinion? Is it okay if the second point after the comma is shifting by 1 or 2, or do you think this will already scare people away? Like, how tight does it really have to be? I'm not sure about that.
I mean, like, in my opinion, like 3% deviation is completely okay. Like, especially if you consider that, like, majority of vault who is not like, domestically using USD is kind of using USD in crypto. And it is, like, for example, I am European, right? And, like, I'm okay with dollar deviating from euro, right? So I am not like that hurt, right? If like my stable coin will slightly deviate also.
I guess to add to that, Raphael, it also probably matters what your view is and what your kind of projected use for DAI is, right? I saw this too, Bourbon asking about like basis points fee for flash minting. It's like, yeah, it all depends on the use case you see and what you add in. But ultimately, like 100 basis points, right, which would be 2 decimal points over, is a lot. And even 50 basis points, like if you start to do larger transactions, it creates quite a bit of fees and friction. So all depends, right?
Yeah, I think we can't really make a decision if we don't have strong models about how this affects the whole system. And I mean, we could run this experiment, right? I think it would be totally okay to say, hey, we're introducing that for a month or a week, and then just see what happens. And maybe, like Shupi said, nothing happens, and it's like, okay.
I want to answer to one of the things that Chris said, that growth is incentivized to keep a hard peg. We're not. I'm just telling all of you the consequences of having a soft peg, because this will affect on-off ramps, this will affect retail people that is buying DAI because they consider it a stable coin. This will affect the whales that are opening maker vaults because they get DAI and then they convert it to USDC. So of course, like if we want to go in the direction of DAI soft peg because the white paper stated that, we can go there. And of course, we growth will support that. But we have all to be aware that it won't be a stable coin. It will be something else, because people on like their mindset, stable coin is equal to something that is hard peg. And yes, you can explain to them and etc., but they will always prefer a stable coin that is hard peg, that is high liquidity, and they can convert into fiat. So if we change the direction, what growth will do is to change like the audience, the message, and all of that. So no, we are not incentivized to go in that direction, but we have to tell the community about the consequences and what will happen if we decide to do that. Is that it?
Thanks, Nadia. And I do see Chris raise his hand. I want to take it away.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, of course, growth is incentivized to keep a hard peg, as is real world assets and some other core units probably. And that's not I'm not saying that as an aspersion. I'm saying that as a fact of the way the organization is built. And I think it's important for us to recognize that each team has incentives that it is driven toward, because each team wants to be successful. That's not a bad thing. That's why we have core units, right? It's to separate out responsibilities and goals and objectives. Everybody wants Maker to succeed, but everybody also wants to be successful. And if there is not a hard peg, growth becomes harder, right? It becomes harder to grow. It's possible we might even shrink. And obviously the growth team doesn't want us to shrink. The growth team wants us to grow. So I'm not saying that the growth team should advocate for a soft peg and hope that we don't grow. Like, that's not the role of growth. But it's important in these conversations to recognize what each team's objectives are, how they're incentivized. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So I don't take it as an aspersion. It's just the way the organization should be set up. That's what I mean when I'm talking about incentives.
Yeah, I think that's valuable to reflect on incentives. I was also thinking what Nadia said though, is that right? Like, if a core unit's mandate is to promote what the protocol goes with, if the protocol decides they don't want a value peg, then the core unit would be shifting as well. I think that's probably important to point out. So there's some interesting side chat going on just about like the flexibility, right? Like, we heard Chris chime in and say, like, 3% isn't that bad. I don't know if there's more combos we could be having there, but just noticing a lot of chat about how necessary 1-to-1 is.
Yeah, I just want to point out one more time that DAI has no value other than what someone will pay for it. And the reason that someone pays for it is to unlock the collateral in their vaults. Real world assets, they're net sellers until such point as, they want to rebuy and repay DAI. That's over a longer period. Like, they're not incentivized to repay in a downturn. It is quite possible that they can set limit orders to rebuy from other RWA buyers in the future and get that $1 price. Like, I think we're over optimizing for a thing that we shouldn't be over optimizing for, and we're losing all of our revenue because of it.
Also, let's not forget that some RWA platforms are looking to get some of the RWA collateral types on chain. So let's give them a little bit of credit. I mean, with or without MakerDAO, RWAs are going to get on chain, in my opinion. And it's a matter of whether we want it, how badly do we want it, and if we want to make it happen. If we don't want to make it happen, then let's just opt out of it. But to Nick's point on the chat, I mean, we just spent a bunch of years, a lot of resources, a lot of money to try to get there. And yeah, just it's going to happen, folks.
Yeah, Max, feel free, as long as it's related to the peg.
Yeah, so I joined this conversation late, and I'm trying to make sense of why the RWA lending is seen as not profitable.
Has there been any claim to it not being profitable? I don't want to mischaracterize it if there has, but my understanding.
Or I guess maybe why it's controversial here.
Sure, yeah, I don't know if Brian or someone wants to speak to that directly.
Why real world assets are controversial?
As it relates to this peg conversation.
So with the collateral vaults, right? I put in $150 worth of ETH, and I can take out $100 worth of DAI. At some point, I'm going to want my ETH back, either because ETH price is falling, and I want to stop the hemorrhaging, or because ETH price has gone up and I want to repay and unlock that $150 worth of collateral at the time. Real world asset providers, like the current schemes, we're setting like a 2-year interest rate buffer on those. So these real world asset providers don't even have a DAI demand for another 2 years. And then even then, like, I'm not convinced that we've got enforcement of these repayment schemes worked out to such a point that they'll create enough DAI demand to keep peg from going low.
Okay, let me talk about that. Like, yeah, let me talk about enforcement schemes. So in the proposed Huntington Valley Bank deal, which is up for vote right now, a Delaware statutory trust funded by a vault set up by Maker would then purchase assets. So these loans would then be in custody at the Delaware Trust, and they would have a duration of less than 5 years, and over the course of that 5-year period, they would pay back principal and interest. Does that make sense? And then the principal and interest, obviously principal is the principal, and interest is floating at a rate above benchmarks. So probably 4.5% right now, net.
Someone that can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fear and the criticism is not so much that, like, all right, well, what if there's no assets, right? Like, these things have said there will be these assets defined by that. The question is, like, are those assets, like, what are they doing to the peg? And do they actually encourage, like, DAI to be bought back? If that's fair, Brian.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, an arbitrageur can play both sides. They can effectively market make as long as there's a market to be made. But but we don't have that. So we are the market with the PSM fees at 0. So we've kind of tamped down one component of the ecosystem, which is that arbitrage market, by setting the PSM fees to 0. And then, I think the point about the real world assets is, you mentioned that these repayment schemes aren't set to happen for another couple of years. So in the meantime, we still need to spark DAI demand so that we can keep taking on these real world asset deals and let them continue to sell their DAI for some, amount of USDC or dollars equivalent to the nominal value of the DAI they take out. But we can only do that for so long until there's no more demand for DAI. With the normal collateral vaults, the arbitrageurs would pick that up and add to or repay vaults as the price fluctuates. But because we're the whole market for that, and I should point out we're not actually making any money by being that market maker. It's not clear that we've been cultivating the arbitrage ecosystem that would manage the peg over the long term without the demand to repay.
Okay, so from what I see is that in the PSM, Maker's holding many billions of USDC. I don't know if it's 5 billion or something. And that's effectively 5 billion of runway, where through the RWA program, you can increase the supply of DAI. And the broker dealer who's going to swap that DAI for dollars is probably going to route through the PSM, swap the DAI for USDC through the PSM, reduce and draw down the USDC in the PSM, which is good for MakerDAO. And then through whatever window at Circle is used to swap USDC for dollars is going to do that swap and then fund the trust. So it not only generates a yield for Maker, but it also addresses another problem in the system, which is this concentration and collateralization with zero yield stablecoins like USDC.
I mean, to be clear, when a real world asset provider takes a 500 million DAI loan and they push it into the PSM, they're burning DAI. So they're decreasing the supply.
Hey, Brian, question for you. If the PSM was never implemented back in, I think it was 2020, how much DAI outstanding you think we have right now without the PSM?
Yeah, I don't know. That was, the quote unquote scale isn't what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the stability of the system and the long-term sustainable growth and security of the system. Like I said, we've got this existential 85% USDC right now that is not sustainable, and is like I said, a vanity metric that's going to disappear if DAI demand starts to dry up. I do hear a lot of comparisons to Rye, like, oh, we'll be like Rye. I mean, I like Rye. It's got its own problems though, namely that it's a fork. The founders are a little bit different. It's got a weird peg mechanism. Like there are just things that you can't really compare it to DAI with.
So if during the RWA process, the broker dealer gets DAI from the vault, from the MIP21, sends it to the PSM and effectively burns the DAI, but gets back USDC, drawing it out of Maker, and using it to create new collateral that's going to back MakerDAO. How is that not a great flow and beneficial? I'm asking earnestly because I do want to understand where the challenge is here. And again, I answered the conversation late.
I don't know. I think it works until it doesn't. And a lot of people in this chat have come in since 2020 when DAI started trading above peg, and they didn't see the process that the DAO went through prior to that, just trying to keep the peg up. We were talking, we had 20% stability fees on collateral vaults at one point to try and hold that peg up. And we'll be back to that. And all of that USDC in the PSM will be gone, but we'll be dealing with a completely different problem that could be solved by encouraging vault holders.
Thanks, Brian. I want to be mindful Eric has raised his hand, so yeah, give you mic.
Yeah, hey, it's Eric. It's an interesting conversation. One point I do want to make is at this point, there's about 5 times as much canonical DAI as crypto DAI. So it's about 5 billion versus 1 billion. Right now, the canonical DAI is making no money, but it's starting to get put into the kind of treasury assets where you'd hope you could probably earn on aggregate 1% on that 5 billion. So assuming you get this up and going, it's going to be making probably more money potentially than the crypto DAI. And I like crypto DAI, but let's be honest, folks, the rates have come way down. It's a pretty commoditized product, just lending. There's nothing really, there's no moat there. Long term, it's just, I have to tell you, I look at canonical DAI and I think this is the North Star. This has network effects. You can build payment rails. You can have massive integrations in the real world. People in Argentina with inflation want to use it. And then I look at crypto DAI and I like it, but it's kind of low. It's a relatively low volume, low margin business, and we should always have it there. But it's just, I just don't see it as a North Star. And I think as people race to scale, it's just another product among many, as opposed to having a stable coin that lots of folks want to use at scale. Is something else entirely, something more special. When I look at canonical DAI, I say that's something that's special, that scales, and that can have much more impact in the $400 trillion real world asset. That's my take.
Thanks for the perspective, Eric. It's somewhat unsurprisingly, the ramifications of this talk have led us into a lot of different directions. Noting the time here, and do want to be mindful that we are running out. Are there aspects to this debate that we feel like haven't been represented on the call? Be happy to call on anyone who's been working up a chat storm. I apologize that I haven't been able to read off everything that's going on there.
And it's Eric, I'd follow up again. If folks tend to agree that the canonical DAI is an important part of our ecosystem, I think we should we need to think more carefully about what the canonical DAI holders want. What are their interests? I mean, if there are 5 billion out there, they deserve weighting in our considerations, around fees and asset stability and peg stability. That's our biggest product user right now. And I feel like we don't give them enough weight and enough seriousness. And hopefully by doing this right, in a couple of years, it could be 50 billion, but you got to take those guys very seriously, and meet their needs.
Cool. Any last thoughts on your end, GP, as someone who proposed this topic?
Maybe it's a good segue if we have time to talk about the Constitution. I am curious what people are thinking about that. And to Eric's point about taking the views of other parts of other stakeholders in the whole ecosystem, this was a great conversation. What should be our takeaway from this to act on what we talked about? I feel like we've raised some new, at least for me, some new angles to consider very urgently. And is the Constitution a process that can help the community sort through where we land on this, or not, would be my question, if it's okay to segue to that topic, not to cut off this conversation.
No, I'm more than up for it. I was also fine tabling it for another day, but we do have about 15 minutes here. And I haven't seen anyone else jumping out the bit to add more to this. So if you're willing to roll through the slides there, Thomas. Might as well get a brief discussion in on the Constitution point. Yeah, we may not have one because it was a backup. Sorry, should have double checked before asking. So I'm happy to introduce it unless you had anything you wanted to say on it, Thomas. Cool. So basically, this has come up in a few different of the long version proposals, and it's just practically something that, like, when we talk about having a vision or like having a you know, like organizational goals or anything that you would kind of traditionally think of as commonly agreed upon. Well, the only way you can do that in a DAO is to have a document or something that you agree on and agree not to change it or to only change it if very strict kind of consensus is reached. So the question is, like, with the Maker Constitution, is this something we could see as helpful for settling ideological debates like this? Is this something that's practical for a DAO that can have, you know, many different parties with many different many different motivations? Yeah, those are, I guess, some kind of discussion bits to kick it off. Is like, yeah, that's what a constitution is. Is it something that could be useful for us? Is the exploration question.
I would encourage anybody interested in this to go check out the MakerDAO white paper, because if you want a constitution, it seems like a great place to start. I know it's why I'm here, and I know why a lot of early investors are here. And so if we want to change that, that should be a DAO-wide conversation.
Yeah, certainly, right? Like, I mean, anyone could put up a vote a MIP that's the MakerDAO constitution, right? Like, procedurally, it wouldn't be too hard to do, but the question is, like, is that a worthwhile endeavor to take on? And even, you know, the white paper stuff, like, you know, if you take the viewpoint that was the constitution, it's like, all right, well, how many things from the white paper are no longer true, like, are no longer in our business model? Is that something that should be revisited and revamped, right? Is it worth releasing a white paper 2.0?
First, my slight comment on that is, I think tackling the white paper or the constitution is a very valid thing to do, because it's the root of all these discussions and questions we have at the moment. Do we focus on real world asset? Do we not? How much on-chain versus off-chain should we be? How much of a investment vehicle, credit facility are we? Where do we sit on this scale of on the table? So, like, I don't know, I think it's very difficult to answer, but I think we have to answer that. Otherwise, we're going to be in this perpetual, how much should we be leaning in this direction or not? We have to accept which way we're going. And I think a lot of that comes from either, a document, a vision, a mission, what is it we're here to do type of thing, which seems to be where this constitution discussion is going in. So it's the right discussion to have, I think. And hopefully that will help answer where we need to focus, which I think feels like it's a lot of the challenges we're focusing, that we have at the moment, that we're talking through. So I guess the question is how, if we do want to do it, the white paper is a great starting point of that discussion, because it's what we have now. It's why we started on this journey. How much does it change? Who changes it? How's the discussion? What is the process for having that conversation? I think we need to arrive at some sort of a group to have that, to facilitate the discussion. Not quite sure how we go about it, but I think there has to be, again, some sort of an owner, someone to sort of pick up the reins and at least put it forward to the community for discussion and debate, which is kind of where we are now, but it doesn't really have an owner or someone to hold the reins. And we've seen different groups. We had the growth group, we had Rune's group. We're all trying to get to the same place in the end. We just don't quite know the journey there. So yeah, just some thoughts there.
So from a political perspective, like a constitution exists in a democratic system, within a democratic system, to protect, it defines some processes, but it also protects minority rights. And as I think Ben Franklin said, democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding on what to have for dinner. The Constitution is what would kind of protect minority stakeholders from plans that would fleece them effectively. And if you want a robust community, you need to be able to protect those small holders. Otherwise, it'll just be the plutocrats running the show. So give the little guy something to grab onto, and if you don't want to do that, then that's fine too. Just vote on it, and we can all move on to something else.
Thanks for the valuable feedback there, and yeah, nice to see Chris and Monet agreeing in chat as well. Take it when we can get it. A lot of talks for trying to code essentially a constitution. And then the CERN joke too. That's a good one there. All right. Noting the time here, this is obviously like a broader conversation, so I we kind of had it as a backup. We weren't sure how much the first one would go. But yeah, this is a common problem in DAO, and naming obviously matters, Monet, like in terms of whether you call it a constitution or vision statement or what have you. And don't mean to imply that like constitution is more necessary than any of the other ones. Yeah. Agreeing with you, Chris, but I do see Bourbon raise his hand, so I'll give you a chance here, Bourbon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're half an hour past or whatever. Yeah, so, there's been a lot of talk about the ESM, and this is sort of a minority thing. Does anyone actually know what the original intent of it was? I mean, like, we have two people that were involved in building it, but we've been moving it out of the way. I mean, I believe it wasn't put there by accident. If we're going to be removing it or not, like, what is in place of it? I really would like to, because I actually don't know in which case it might get triggered. I don't really see it as an attack vector. I mean, there are like edge cases where it could be exploited, borrowing maker, maybe shorting DAI. I think it's I think it was put there for a reason, but I don't fully understand which case it might ever be triggered in. And before we rush to getting rid of that, that is sort of like the minority holder protection that I believe we had. Like, does anyone truly understand what purpose it was there for, and like what the original intent of it was before we go axing it?
Are any of the OGs looking to speak to the purpose of the ESM?
Yeah, I think maybe I can chip in. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes. I mean, I guess others cannot chip in, but from what I've heard from a lot of discussion, especially Rune back then he was especially very concerned about corruption and collusion. And the idea was that what would happen if, for example, significant maker holders got it together and then basically they can do what they want, and the status quo doesn't change. And his idea was that there should be a way for even minority holders to really change that. Now I think that realistically, we have realized that even if they try to do that, they still the majority can just say it's new and just burn it for no cost. But we also saw that maybe there's some other use for it. But at least in terms of philosophy, that was kind of thinking, and that's why it also stayed. But others can chip in their version. At least this is like my version.
I heard almost none of that. Dewey, I think I might have to buy you a microphone, but something it was. Yeah, I actually missed all that. Did anyone else catch that?
More than happy to explain like the governance side
Okay.
of it.
Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Better now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Seems like that my microphone didn't work. But basically, back then, Rune was especially concerned about corruption and collusion. And his idea was that he was worried that there might be majority maker holders who would just use it for their benefit, and then status quo wouldn't change. So his idea was that it would allow like minority maker holders to basically challenge the protocol and then change it and fork it. But in reality, I would say that there's still the concern about like even if they burn it and trigger it, like can they just burn it for no good reason? So I mean, I think that's the reality that we are facing, but at least that was the intent. But feel free for others to also chip in their version.
This was what was the ESM Rune's idea, Nikolai's idea? I really don't remember whose idea it was. I mean, if the concern is corruption and minority holders having a chance to shut down the protocol, then yeah, it's still necessary. I think if enough holders gain control, but like I struggle to see who would voluntarily torch their own maker rather than selling it, just for the good of the system. I still struggle to see it as an attack vector. It's an obscure one. I mean, it should be definitely higher than any one person in some drunken state can trigger on their own. But purely as a borrow the maker and short it attack, I think that one's quite hard to execute. If you can predict the tertiary effects of, if you could predict like which way the peg will go, and short that as well, then like Bitten said, then yeah, like you can actually profit quite well, but you're not with certainty, you're spending a lot of capital to execute this attack, and you're not 100% sure DAI is going to break peg in the direction you want it to, probably down, but like if you're gonna spend that kind of capital, you want to be, if you're a government, I mean, yeah, if we get targeted by a state actor at this point, I mean, I don't think we stand a chance. I mean, we're right, but yeah, I still like whether the ESM in its current implementation is the right form, but some sort of thing like it, yeah.
Thanks, Irvin. And we do have a few ESM threads going on the forum, so I would encourage we kind of continue the conversation there. Knowing the time here and want to be respectful of everyone, I think we should think about wrapping it up. Are there any last questions or comments we wanted to include in this call? All right, well, I do appreciate the discussion. It's really nice to get so many different voices weighing in. Hopefully we'll have more issue discussion calls, other things that we can use to kind of funnel these specific conversations and debates. But really appreciate all the ground we covered today. We'll be back same time, same place next week. So see you in the forums. Have a good one, everyone.